My name is Don Davis. I'm your host tonight for the second evening of Unchained. I am also one of the pastors here at the Spartanburg Seventh Adventist Church, and we're just glad that you could be able to join us tonight. I know last night, I don't know about you, but my heart was really touched as I heard Richie Halverson share his personal testimony about how he was brought back from addiction, as a pastor, son of a pastor, and yet how he went through all that he did, was able to go and, in spite of being convicted on 4 felony charges, that he still was able to experience hope and restoration in his life. And so we just want to continue, glad that you could continue with us for this journey. And if you missed last night, be sure to go to our YouTube channel and be able to go and catch that last night's episode. Encourage your friends and family to join us as well, as we will be continuing to learn more about how Richie was victorious in his recovery journey, but also how we can be able to have hope as well. I just want to also mention that we want to encourage you to go and register. If you haven't registered yet, please do so. That will help you to be able to stay up to date with some of our different notifications and reminders about what's coming up during this week, as well as the fact that, and we didn't mention this last night, but Richie will be coming here to Spartanburg live in September. And so we want to keep you informed so that you know how you can be able to be part of that live event as well. Now, some of you are wondering about last night. Did anyone win the free gift, the free giveaway, the book? And so Richie has written a book on his journey. And if you'd like to go and have a chance to be able to go and win the copy tonight, we're going to put a phone number up on the screen that you can be able to text to and have an opportunity to win the book that will be given away tonight. We did have a actual couple that won the book last night, and we're glad that we can be able to pass that on to them. But as you see, just text to 534-444-7183 to win the gift book tonight. And you can also use that text number to be able to go and text us questions that you might have. Also to be able to go and share with us any confidential maybe issues or questions that you might not feel comfortable sharing in the group chat. And we do want to encourage you to go and use the group chat on either the Facebook Live or on the YouTube channel to be able to go and be part of a community as we watching and participating together this evening. So please, if you have a comment, we'd like to go and say, hey, we really appreciate that thought. Just be able to go and put a phrase or a word in the chat. And if you're joining us live for the first time tonight, just put in that you're new. In other words, just the word new. And we're just glad that you could be able to be with us. Tonight, we want to go and I'd like to introduce some friends, Kyle and Delia Grubbs. Kyle and Delia, I got acquainted with them for really the first time 2 years ago as they ended up sharing their story of recovery. And it was an inspiration to me. I hope it will be an inspiration to you as well. So, as I know your family, I know you're part of our church family as well. Can you tell us a little bit about, obviously life was not as good as it is right now. So can you tell us a little bit about your journey, where you've been and kind of what you were really struggling with at one point in both of your lives?
Well, since I was a child, I started having depression and anxiety and insecurity. And I was brought up in a Christian home, in a Christian environment, and I felt the demons, I guess attacking me because I was battling this depression, and I really didn't feel like I had anything to be depressed or anxious about, which was kind of baffling to me.
Mm-hmm.
And So I had a lot of conflict growing up, but I just had this internal struggle that I just couldn't cope with and handle with. And early on as a child, I just had the thought that if I could just get a hold of some alcohol, just kind of, take the edge off, that I could function in life. And I'm not really sure where I got that idea, but pretty much ever since I was could get my hands on some alcohol, I would drink, which is few and far between in my teens. It wasn't that often, but as soon as I was able to start drinking alcohol, and it as soon as I started drinking and it was there was I couldn't stop. So it was like it helped me feel good, but then I had no control over stopping. It's like I didn't want to lose that feeling of feeling okay, and I would drink to excess. And right from the beginning, I was already, blacking out and showing out, and just being told things that I did or said, or when I was drinking. And a long story short, I was a functional alcoholic for a long time. I don't know if y'all have heard the word functional alcoholic, but I would secretly drink at the house and keep the alcohol locked up in my closet if I had family over. Run in there, take a few sips, put it back, and go to work. I worked for a long time, and I had ever since I was 16, I had a car and drove, and ever since I was 18, I was self-sufficient and able to hold a job and pay my own bills. And even though I kept getting in trouble with the law, I kept managing to slip through that and keep on going. So I basically started off with the alcohol to deal with the feelings, and it eventually led to shooting up heroin and meth.
So alcohol was really your whole addiction was a secret to your family and to others then as well. Is that right?
That is correct. And, I would even drink a couple of beers before I came to church because I justified in my mind that I needed it to calm my nerves, and that I needed it.
So now, what was your profession? What's your profession that you were involved with at that time?
Well, I was a paramedic. I started off as a paramedic pretty much very early on. I was still 18 when I started working as a paramedic and turned 19 shortly after. And I was a paramedic for 10 years. And then I continued on to nursing, still drinking through the whole time, drinking through school to help me. I felt like it was helping me pass my grades. And I was just like, I just require alcohol to function, and there's nothing I can do about it.
Mm-hmm. So Kyle, what was your experience? What was your journey compared to Delia?
Well, I didn't. Excuse me. I didn't necessarily suffer from depression as a kid. My depression came from the alcohol and the drug abuse. But I started because I just couldn't fit in anywhere.
Mm-hmm.
I couldn't find my spot, and I was able to find my spot with alcohol, and it started out smoking weed as a kid. Mm-hmm. And at that time I didn't think I really had an issue because everybody I was hanging out with did it too, so it was like the norm, but I started getting in trouble at a very early age, as blacking out and ending up in the hospital and all this stuff. I was a little bit different than Delia. I was not functional at all. I would have periods where I could hold down jobs, but I couldn't hold them down permanently. Like,
Mm-hmm.
I couldn't function without it. I couldn't even function with it. So, because I had to have it to the extreme. That was my thing. I was always drinking to blackout, always using to go completely into oblivion.
So now, compared to like with Delia, with her basically keeping this so that no one knew what was going on, were your family and friends able to know what was going on in your life?
Everybody knew what was going on.
Everyone knew.
Yeah, I could not hide it as much as I thought I could, but there was no hiding it at all.
So I'm just wondering what actually ended up, how did things progress for the two of you? I mean, as far as obviously different paths, different maybe different experiences, but yet, how did things kind of start unraveling for you? Can you tell us that?
Well, I guess the last time I had tried everything, everything under the sun. I went, church. I was brought up in church too,
Mm-hmm.
and I never felt like I could never meet that expectation that was kind of set upon that
Sure.
I made in my head.
In other words, that people have to be perfect. In other
Right.
words, right?
Right.
Okay.
And I was already, not going to be able to make it up to heaven considering all the stuff that I did.
Sure.
That was what was kind of pushed onto me. So I was like, well, I might as well do what I can down here,
Right.
But as time went on and I found, as many times as I, overdosed and I stopped, I couldn't stop, but I was still here. For some reason, I was still here, and my turning point, I was laying in our bed, and I couldn't live with it. I couldn't live without it, and it couldn't kill me. But I had knew of another way of life. I had seen people get it. I had a friend, had 3 years in recovery, and I was like, well, how did he do it?
Mm-hmm.
I had met people that had like 20, but I didn't believe them. But this guy, I believed, and I kind of went the way he did.
So, I felt like I had a lot of rock bottoms. Like my first time I got arrested for disorderly conduct, we had parked somewhere so that we wouldn't get a DUI and gone out bar hopping, and somehow or another I got agitated to the point where I got arrested for throwing a shot glass at someone, and initially that was devastating to me, and I went to, then once that was expunged, I was like, oh, okay. And then I got a DUI a few years after that, and of course that's my crises. I'm going to change, things are going to change, and then I'd go right back. And every time you couldn't think things could get worse, they always got worse. And I just, it was one saying like, well, things can't get any worse, so at least there's that. And then I find out it can always get worse. There is no limit to the worst. And that was just the worse and worse that it got. I just didn't think I could handle much worse. But I was able to, my job would help me get through my DUIs and things like that. And they were, I guess, enabling me, enabling. And I thought they were helping me, but they thought they were helping me, but they were enabling my addiction. And, I went to rehabs. Multiple suicide attempts. It was just, it's like I didn't want to die, but I couldn't stand to live with the pain that was inside, and just no explanation as to what was going on. And I just couldn't figure it out. I went to professionals, I went to psychiatrists, I went to counselors, and I just felt like there was no hope. And so I'm like, well, I kind of was like Kyle, where I kind of felt like, like I had maybe grieved the Holy Spirit. And I was like, well, I eventually had a son. I'm like, I think the only thing that I can do, I know I have to have alcohol to function, so I'm just going to drink 2 to 3 beers a day just to keep me functioning. And then before I'd know it, I'd wrecked my car in a ditch and was running around at night trying to figure out how to get home and not know how I got there. It was just the craziest things that don't make any sense. And so, like, finally, I'm like, I just got really tired. I got sick and tired of being sick and tired, and I think that I just I think I got that gift of desperation. That gift of desperation that drove me to cling to hope.
Well, just to have so many times where you were trying to seek help and then have it fall apart still. I mean, that must have been very discouraging, right? And then that just sense of spiraling. So I know when you had shared your story with me a couple of years ago, you had said that you ended up eventually being out on the coast. Is that right? I think you had said that you had basically lost family and lost your jobs and things like that as well, right?
Yeah, so it eventually came to me filing for, well, we were going to have to file for bankruptcy. Our house was foreclosed. Our car was repossessed. They came and just took it. I was let go from my job, and I had got to the point where people had started to cut ties, and we were just with nothing. And our power had been turned off at the house, and
Keeping things cold in the snow.
Can you go and let people hear what Kyle says?
Oh yeah, we were keeping things cold in the snow because we had lost power.
Okay, so it was winter then.
Yeah, it was.
And you had lost your kids.
Yeah, I had lost custody of the Brianna and Jake.
Mm-hmm.
It was just we had really nothing but each other.
So then, what was the next step? I mean, lost your home, lost your car, lost your family, your kids. I mean, what happened next?
Well, you would think that would have been enough to make it stop, but we kind of continued on for a little while. It actually made it worse because it was kind of like, that led to more depression, and more depression leads to, I don't want to feel that depression, so I know what I can do to get rid of that depression real quick, at least for a little while, until that stopped working too,
We sold all our possessions and spent we sold all our possessions and spent all my retirement basically still feeding our addiction.
So, and there came a point in time where you had lost even your license to be a nurse. Is that right?
I did. My license initially had been was just, they told me not to practice as a nurse, and it had not been suspended. And then I couldn't stop using and drinking, and they eventually did suspend my nursing license as well.
So just about everything's been taken away at this point, right?
Yeah, and that November of, when was it, 2015, I think it was, I had a pretty severe overdose where I was out for a good while, and she came in and found me, and I was blew all the way to my fingertips, I believe. And I had a stroke while I was out, and I didn't think I was going to be able to work, and I had filed for disability and all that for that year as well.
So then I think you had said that you were eventually ended up in Wilmington. Was it Wilmington, North Carolina?
Yeah, I had already tried so many rehabs and so many places, and my husband and I, it was destroying our marriage. Like, we were losing each other, and he finally gave me an ultimatum. He said, we're going to Wilmington or we're not staying together. And I was just like, well, I was willing to do it. And we both asked our parents if they'd put the deposit, and miraculously they said yes, because we didn't think that they would. And that was the beginning of a new chapter in our lives. That was the beginning of the end of our old lives.
So you were in treatment, and I think, Kyle, at that time you were actually out on the street. Is that right? Or
Well,
at least you weren't in the same program together,
we had
right?
started
Yeah, we started in the same program.
Oh, okay. You
And
started in the
housing.
same program.
Yeah.
Okay.
And on, the ultimatum my dad gave me, he was like, I'm going to give you this money to get into there. But if you get kicked out or if you leave for any reason, I'm not sending you, I'm not sending you any more money. He knew me. And I ended up kind of voluntarily getting kicked out myself.
because they wouldn't let us spend
Yeah.
be together.
Yeah, they wouldn't let us be together.
Each
Yeah.
other and stuff.
And at that time, we had lost our family, we had lost everybody, and the only thing that we had was each other, and I felt like that was being taken from us too, and I was like, what do I do, and it was just bad, and then we came back here for a court date, and we found out our little Samantha back there was on the way at that time, and I went back with her. I did not want to miss a doctor's appointment. I didn't want to I didn't want to send her back up there by herself pregnant and just be back here. My original plan was to stay here and to get a job and blah, blah, all that stuff. But I ended up going back, and her dad dropped her off at her recovery house, and he dropped me off on the park bench. And I stayed there that night in the cold January rain. And that was probably one of the first of many spiritual experiences I had that night.
So spiritual experience, what do you mean by that?
Well, whenever I was laying there, I was just like, my kids, my wife, I do not want them to remember me this way, dying out here on the street. So it pushed me to really realize that this addiction is life or death. It's life or death, and I have to do everything that I can to maintain it and to achieve it.
So I know that we're going to go and have, you want to share anything more? Because I know we're kind of going to have part 2 of your story tomorrow, and we'll tell you more about how that will take place. But I want you, if you have a question for Kyle and Delia about their experience, what they've gone through, what they've shared in their journey, please go and again text that to the number at the bottom of your screen. You can go and even put it in the chat there as well. If this their story resonates with you, or you just have it brings up memories of maybe yourself or someone, family member, or what they've gone through, just be able to go and indicate that in the chat as well. And we want to be able to go. We'll end up having Kyle and Delia share in question and answer at our end of our session tonight, and be able to go and share a little bit more personally, as you might have certain questions for them as to how they were coping and getting through what they did. And we'll have part 2 of their story tomorrow. But what they've shared tonight, you can go and respond to that, and we'll have a question and answer for them at the end. So at this time, Richie Halverson has another special presentation. We're going to go and have him share that with you, and another step in the journey to hope and recovery.
Welcome back to Unchained, Hope and Healing from Addiction. In this series, we're going to look at ways that we can break through some of the addictions and toxic ways of dealing with life. It doesn't matter if it's a big addiction or a small addiction, whatever it is, you can find a freer, better way to live life. And so that's what this series is all about. In our last session, we looked at this person, the demoniac, who was filled with demons. He was chains all over his body, and he was living in a graveyard. And we saw what God was able to do in him. And that's the good news of this series, Unchained, is God can do that in your life as well. Now, the first breakthrough that we have to have if we want to live an unchained life is we have got to break through the dishonesty and the denial. You know, we've got to recognize there's a problem if we're going to deal with the problem. We've got to be willing to recognize and identify the elephant in the room. There is a children's book called There Is No Such Thing as Dragons. And in this story, there is a boy who sees a small dragon at home one day, and he tells his mom, and his mom quickly says, well, honey, there's no such things as dragons. And at first, this dragon is small. It's manageable. But every time the mom says there's no such thing as dragons, the dragon gets bigger. It gets bigger until the dragon is bigger than their house. And it's running all through town, and it's causing all kinds of problems. And again, the mother is just kind of oblivious to this dragon. She can't see it, or maybe she's not willing to see it. Finally, the dad comes home and he asks what happened. And Billy says, well, it was the dragon. And mother begins to say, but there's no such thing as, and then Billy interrupts. There is a dragon, Mom. There is a very big dragon. And as they start acknowledging the dragon and its reality, the dragon starts to shrink. And it gets smaller, and it gets smaller, and it gets smaller until at the very end, it's back to being about the size of a cat. At the end, the mom asks, well, why did the dragon have to get so big? And Billy says, I think it just wanted to be noticed. Problems, addictions, dysfunctions, they don't get better by ignoring them. Man, they only get worse. You see, it's only after admitting the problem that we can actually address the problem. The problem is as the pastor Timothy Keller puts, our lives run on denial like cars run on gasoline. You see, we just are constantly filled with denial about everything. Everyone is. It's always easier to see someone else's problem than to deal with our own problem. It's always easier to see someone else's insanity than our own insanity. But this is the thing. An upper-class, pill-popping, doctor-hopping addict is no less insane than the homeless person shooting up dope under the bridge. In fact, I would suggest the person under the bridge is less insane because at least they know that they've got a problem. We've got to get honest. A lot of people watching and a lot of people in the world, maybe you haven't gotten honest with the reality that you have a problem, that there's something in your life that is holding you back. In John's gospel, we have two people who've got to get honest if they're going to get any better. And what I love about this story is these are two totally different people. All right, in John 3, we have our first character. It says, there was a man of the Pharisees named Nicodemus, a ruler of the Jews. This man came to Jesus by night. And then in John 4, the next chapter, we have our second character. It was about the 6th hour, a woman of Samaria came to draw water. And so Nicodemus goes to Jesus at night. The Samaritan woman goes to the well when no one is supposed to be there. Man, it is amazing the things we try to do to hide from each other. You see, Nicodemus and the Samaritan woman are as different from each other as you can get, or so it seems. One's a Jew, one's a Samaritan, and they didn't like each other. One's a male, one's a female. One is very famous, he's a ruler of the synagogue, and the other one, the Bible doesn't even record her name. And yet I find it really cool that for both these people and their problems, the solution is exactly the same. John 3:5, Jesus tells Nicodemus, truly, truly, I say to you, unless one is born of water and the Spirit, he cannot enter into the kingdom of God. And then to the woman at the well, Jesus says, if you knew the gift of God and who it is that is saying to you, give me a drink, you would have asked him and he would have given you living water. Man, God wants to give you something that really works. Because often the wells we go to in life doesn't work. Or it doesn't work for long. You know, the drugs work for a little bit, but it doesn't last. You know, popularity works for a little while, but I promise before long you're going to be thirsty again. The pats on the back work for a little while, they feel good, but you're going to be thirsty again. Look, the drugs work at first, but you're going to get thirsty again. Religion without a relationship, right? Just living a religious life, that works for a little while, but you'll never quite feel good enough or like you've done quite enough. You're going to be thirsty again. So check this out. Nicodemus goes to Jesus in the middle of the night, right? Why? Well, because he's got a reputation. He's hiding. The Samaritan woman goes to the well at noontime, which was the hottest time of the day, and no one went to the well at that time because, you see, she's also hiding. And interestingly, she's not hiding to keep her reputation. She's hiding because of her reputation. But you know what I love about this story? Is Jesus is already waiting for her at the well. Before she shows up, Jesus is already there. You need to know that God has a solution for you before you even realize it. Before you had a problem, God had a solution. He's already there. Jesus is already with you right now. You may not always feel it, but He's with you. When Jesus asks the Samaritan woman for a drink, it's important to know that when God asks a question, you know, He has all the cards, right? So He's not asking the question for information. When God asks a question, they're always rhetorical, okay? When Jesus asks the question, He's trying to drive home a spiritual point. He doesn't really want a drink. Jesus asks for a drink in order to give the woman a drink. Jesus, whenever He asks for something from us, it's always so He can give us something better. So if He asks for you to surrender the toxic relationship, it's so that He can give you a healthy, better relationship. I know you think that you don't deserve better, but you do. If He asks you to surrender your old life, it's so He can give you a new life. If He asks you for your chains, it's so that He can give you His freedom. Now, when you study this phrase, living water, that was used by people in this time and place for what we would call running water. All right? So living water was basically running water. It was fresh water that came from a stream and not from a well. So living water was believed to come directly from God. It was believed to be supernatural. Friends, only God can give you the water that really satisfies. And so the Samaritan woman asks him, how is it that you, a Jew, ask for a drink from me, a woman of Samaria? And the woman said to him, Sir, I perceive that you are a prophet. Our fathers worshipped on this mountain. You see, she's trying to change the subject. She's dancing around the issue. She doesn't really want to get honest about what's going on in her life. And really, when you look at Nicodemus, he does the exact same thing. Rabbi, we know that you are a teacher come from God, for no one can do these signs that you do unless God is with him. And then he says in John 3:4, how can someone be born when they are old? The Samaritan woman says, you don't have a rope or a bucket to draw up any water. They keep throwing up objections to Jesus instead of really answering his question, really dealing with the issue. The woman says, I don't have a bucket, and this well is very deep. The well isn't deep. Her denial and dishonesty is deep. You see, neither Nicodemus or the Samaritan woman are wanting to be totally honest with Jesus. They're not really wanting to get real with him. But friends, honesty is the place where victory begins. In recovery, if you say something in meetings, and this is something that I had to get used to at first, but addiction has a way of bringing you to your knees. And I remember the first time I went to a meeting, and whenever someone speaks or says something, they always preface it with, my name is so-and-so and I am an addict. My name is so-and-so and I am an addict. And this is to do something extremely important, and that is to get honest about the reality that I'm an addict. You know, to tell on my addiction. Freedom comes when we get honest. My name is Richie. I'm an addict. I've got a problem. It's freeing. It's liberating. That's where the solution can begin. Right now, each one of us needs to get real. And maybe you're not an addict, but you need to say, hey, my name is so and so, and I'm messed up. Man, I have a spending problem. I've got a judgmental problem. I've got a control problem. I've got an anger problem. I need help. And the moment we can admit our problem, man, healing starts happening. And so Jesus is dealing with this with Nicodemus and this woman at the well. Jesus says in John 4:14, the water that I will give them will become in them a spring of living water welling up for eternal life. You haven't experienced life until you've experienced my life. And notice when Jesus says that, the woman says, Sir, give me this water that I may not thirst nor come here to draw. She wants living water now. But of course, Jesus really isn't talking about water. And so what does he do? He brings her to that point, and now it's up to her. She's got to be willing to get honest. You want living water? Then you've got to get real about where you have been going to for fulfillment. You have to get honest that what you've been going to hasn't been working. You've got to be real that what you've been doing doesn't work. John 4:16, go call your husband and come here. You see, Jesus is getting to the core of the problem. She's trying to skirt around the issue. Jesus brings her back. And so she says to him, when he says, bring your husband here, he says, I don't have a husband, the woman replied. So now she's only being partially honest. Friends, partial honesty will not unchain you. It doesn't work. You got to be totally honest, completely honest. And so Jesus says, you're right, you don't have a husband. You've got 5 husbands, and you aren't even married to the man that you're living with now. You spoke the truth. The truth is out. The problem has been identified. She's been going to the wrong thing for satisfaction and fulfillment, but now she tastes the living water of Jesus Christ. Now that she's gotten honest, she's feeling liberated from her problem and her shame and her pain. And that's why in John 4:28, it says that the woman left her water jar. You see, she left her water jar behind because she realizes that that water cannot fulfill her anymore. She leaves her water jar behind because she realizes that she doesn't need that water anymore. It doesn't work. Only the living water works. And so it's not an accident that these two stories are right next to each other in John's gospel. So you have Nicodemus, a ruler of the Jews, and he comes to Jesus by night. And you have a Samaritan woman who came to draw water at noontime. Jesus waits for the church leader to come to him, but for the nameless prostitute who's hooked up with 5 different guys, Jesus goes all the way to Samaria to find them. So Jesus has to wait for some of us to come to him because you see, we think we know everything, right? Nicodemus thinks he knows everything. And so Jesus allows Nicodemus to come to him. But for others of us who are so broken, so lost, Jesus goes all the way to where we are to find us. To Nicodemus, Jesus says, look, all the morality, all the religion, all your works. The Pharisees were these groups of people, man. They had the Bible memorized. They counted their steps. They were extremely religious. And yet Jesus says, you got to be born again. All the morality and religion in the world cannot save you, Nicodemus. To the Samaritan woman, Jesus says, the wells that you've been going to will not fulfill you. Their situations seem different, but check it out. The solution is the same. To Nicodemus, someone who thinks he knows everything, Jesus says, you need to be born again. So that truth is humbling. Nicodemus, you got to get over yourself. But to the woman who already thinks she's nothing, Jesus says, look, for you I have living water. It's empowering. She doesn't need to be humbled. You see, life already humbled her. She needs to be lifted up. The gospel, that's what the gospel does. It humbles, it's got to humble some of us, and it empowers others of us. To those who don't think they know anything, Jesus says, I have living water. And to those that think they know everything, he says, look, Nicodemus, sit down, shut up. You need to be born again. Both Nicodemus and the Samaritan woman were hiding. One to keep his good reputation, the other because of her bad reputation. One life was filled with accomplishments, the other life was filled with mistakes. And yet Jesus doesn't really care where you came from. What Jesus wants to know, not where you came from, but where are you going? Both Nicodemus and the Samaritan woman were on roads leading to dead ends. One was looking for purpose and fulfillment in their good works. The other was looking for purpose and fulfillment in their good looks. Both were chained by what people thought. Both were chained by the way they were raised. Both were chained to dysfunctional approaches to life. They seem to be two polar opposites, but their problem is the same. And so we have a male and we have a female. We have a named and we have the unnamed. We have the educated and we have the uneducated. We have the churched and we have the unchurched. We have a Jew and we have a Samaritan. Jesus seeks one out, the other one seeks Jesus out. One has the Bible memorized, the other has had 5 different husbands. But Jesus offers them both the same thing, living water. Friends, Jesus brought all of us here today. Jesus is speaking to all of us here today. Different people with different problems, different pasts, different pay scales. The Nicodemuses are watching. The Samaritans are watching. The cheaters are watching. The Pharisees are watching. The religious, the worldly, the Democrats, Republicans, smart people, not so smart people. And yet we all need the same thing. Our solution is all ultimately the same thing, and that's living water. You know what I love about Jesus is he meets us wherever we are. Jesus meets the woman at the well at Samaria in the middle of the day, and he also meets Nicodemus in the middle of the night. You see, God has to meet you where you are because he can't meet you where you are not. And so you got to get honest. Stop pretending and start admitting. You know, we've got to admit that we don't have all the answers. We have to admit that, you know what, maybe the way I was raised was a little dysfunctional. We have to admit that, you know what, the way the secular world thinks about this issue, maybe that's not right. We have to admit that we have a problem. We have to admit that we don't have all the answers, that we don't have everything together. We have to admit that we don't just need a few things fixed. We need everything fixed. That I don't just have a problem or a few problems, but that, man, sometimes my greatest problem isn't my predicament or my situation, it's my thinking. And when you start getting honest, man, your chains start losing their power and they start breaking. In John 8:32, Jesus said, "The truth will set you free." So check this out. Freedom cannot happen without truth and honesty. They are inextricably linked. The next time we see Nicodemus, it's in the day, out in the open, publicly asking Pilate for the body of Jesus. You see, friends, that's what the living water will do to you. And so someone who met Jesus originally in the middle of the night now goes in the middle of the day and doesn't care who sees him. And he goes and he asks for the body of Jesus so that he can bury him. The next time we see the Samaritan woman, she's looking for the same people that she used to avoid. That's why she was going to the well in the middle of the day. They're no longer controlled by what people think. They're no longer chained by their problem. They're no longer hiding in their works or hiding in their addictions or in their habits or in their hurt. They're two totally different people, but they're joined by the exact same need. Both were empty, needing to be filled. Both were dirty, felt dirty, and they needed to be washed. And Jesus comes along and offers them both water. Friends, the moment I started admitting I was powerless over my addiction and that my life was unmanageable was when my chains started breaking. That's where the journey has to begin. The truth can set you free right now, but you've got to get honest. You got to get real about what you're going through. What do you have to get honest about right now? You can drop your bucket and you can drop the act and you can receive Jesus' living water today and feel the liberation and freedom. Jesus already knows exactly where you are. Get honest with him. He already knows the truth about you. And so you can get honest with yourself and experience that chain of denial and dishonesty break free.
Wow, what an encouraging message from Richie this evening. Just my takeaway is that God will meet us where we are, no matter who we are, our background, our wealth, our education, our race, wherever we might live. He'll meet us where we are, and Jesus will meet us where we are and give us freedom and hope. So that's just that. That was just tremendous. Just want to let you know that we did have a winner for our book giveaway, Darkness Will Not Overcome, and Rick Tilbury. Congratulations to Rick. Don't give up, because we will have more book giveaways each evening, and we want to have each of you have a chance to be able to go and win Richie's personal signed copy of his book that we'll get to each one of you. We haven't had a lot of questions tonight, so if you still have a question that you'd like to go and post, either by text or even in the chat, please do that right now. And Kyle and Delia will post those chats and post them to them. But I think we have at least one question that we'd like to go and pose to them and get the reaction to. Kyle, you mentioned that how religion hurt you while you were struggling with by convincing you that you were too far gone. And I'm just wondering, how can a church or a religious group help support those who are struggling with addiction in a positive way? Can you respond to that, Kyle? In other words, you were struggling. How can a church or a religious group, or maybe even just other Christians, how can we go and encourage someone who's struggling and thought that they've gone too far?
Then make sure I didn't cut this thing off. From my experience, from I guess from what happened with me, is what it kind of made me change my viewpoint, was the welcoming arms of the church that was right across the street from me, when I was homeless in Wilmington.
When you were on the park bench.
Right. I ended up, being able to stay in a hotel. And ironically, right across the street from the hotel was the Wilmington Seventh-day Adventist Church. And I would be over there on the weekend some. And, I remember going to church there one Saturday. And they always welcomed me in. I never did have anything like dressy to wear. I didn't have, I couldn't, I could go in there in shorts and whatnot because that's what I had, but I didn't, but I was always welcomed. And they reached out to help me. And that was just completely different than what I had experienced.
So different from what you had experienced growing up is what you're saying.
Oh yeah. I mean, I remember one time I was walking down the street in 90-degree weather in July, heading to a meeting, and one of the pastors from the old church that I went to looked at me, saw me, and drove right on past, and didn't even stop to say, "Hey, can I help you? What can I do to help you? Where are you going? Can I give you a ride?" And that kind of really turned me off to that too.
And that pastor brought you the phone.
Oh yeah.
From Wilmington.
Oh yeah, and she ran out of minutes, and the pastor came from Wilmington, came to an NA meeting, and it was not in such a good neighborhood, and he walked in and gave us the card that night because she was out of minutes and we needed him.
Wow.
So just showing love to everyone.
So that's really like being like Jesus, right?
Right. Just
Okay.
like kind of like what we saw tonight.
Okay.
Not just welcoming the ones that you think are living right.
Right. Yeah. Okay. I think we have another question. Why is it that rich and famous individuals are no more resistant to addiction than the rest of us regular people?
Addiction and is a disease that affects us all as human beings, and we all suffer from one or another. And you know, we do like to, as a society, put a stigma towards, the homeless, the ones that are on the streets flying the signs, um, the ones that are not necessarily contributing to society, as that's the stigma of what people think of as alcoholics and addicts. But anybody is susceptible to fall into this. It's a spiritual malady, and it eventually affects us physically and mentally and psychologically, and in every other way. That spiritual malady, and in the end, that's Satan trying to claim our lives. And I think I think the question was about so there's so many people who either have family that will hide the problems. Everybody thinks everything is going great because everybody's really good at hiding their addiction or whatever problems they're going through. And as far as everybody knows, they're doing great. And I think people who are wealthier or can hide it for a while or can pay to get out of situations.
There's just always a missing piece somewhere within everybody, and usually that is the spiritual aspect. And I found out that's what I was missing. I worked in the overdose survivors outreach program, and I would drive around Spartanburg, like reaching out to individuals that had overdosed and survived, and just trying to make contact with them and just to make sure they were alive, because nothing works if you're not alive.
That's right.
So I would go to one house, and there'd be bullet holes in the door, a baby running around in just a diaper, and it was just not a very good environment. I would leave there, drive up just a little bit to like one of the richest neighborhoods in Chesney to meet with a client there. So it doesn't discriminate on who it gets.
Yeah. So addiction is no respecter of persons, right? So I think it kind of, I think we're reminded about that almost every day when we go and see in our news feeds someone who has been in the spotlight, maybe a singer or a actor or someone else that has gone through addiction. In fact, it was just, I think, last week that singer for the national anthem for Major League Baseball home run derby. I mean, if you watch the video, it's really rather sad. Her, rendition of the national anthem when she was clearly drunk, and she admitted that the next day and checked herself into rehab. So it happens, like you said, to everyone. So, well, do we have another question? I've recently heard that addiction is not something people are attracted to as much as a result of something they are trying to escape. What exactly does that mean? Any thoughts?
I take from the question that, nobody goes into using alcohol or drugs or any type of substance to become that addict or alcoholic. Like, nobody strives to be that person. When we don't have that spiritual connection with God, we have that missing piece, and we have something we are trying to replace, whether it be by taking drugs, by watching TV all the time to help us escape, by, social media. There's just different ways to escape reality. And I think a lot of people are trying to escape because they're hopeless, and which eventually leads to despair, and it helps them to put a Band-Aid and cope with that, and to in addiction. And there are so many people just dying by the second, but those who are not actively addicted to a drug that can kill you instantly, there's a lot of people who are just walking, they're living, but they dead inside.
Yeah, living dead. Yeah. Well, I know that we're kind of running toward the end of our time this evening. We don't want to keep people, but I want to let everyone know that tomorrow we're going to have part 2 of your story, both of your stories, and that's going to actually be during a special time tomorrow morning. That will be part of a worship service, which will start at 10:45 a.m. But if you're just wanting to go and catch kind of some of my thoughts and Kyle and Delia's rest of their story, that will happen closer to 11:30 a.m. So we hope that you can be able to join us. If you can't, be sure to go and watch online. We'll archive that session as well. And then once again, we'll meet together tomorrow night at 7 p.m. for the next part of our webinar, Unchained webinar. And I know that one of your friends is going to go and share with us tomorrow night. And so we look forward to that. And again, if you haven't had a chance to go and let one of your friends or family members know about Unchained, we want to encourage you to reach out to them, send them a link. Let them know either they can watch on Facebook Live or on the YouTube channel. Send them that link, encourage them. Hopefully it will be a help to them. And obviously, as we've said last night and again tonight, addiction isn't just substance addiction. There's behavioral addiction as well for either people that are addicted to gaming, gambling, food, TikTok, TikTok, or sex, or any number of things that we are addicted to. So hopefully this will be an encouragement. It's not that we're going to certainly paint ourselves to be the solution, but really an encouragement to the solution through the 12-step programs that are out there. And you can certainly Google all those here locally in the Spartanburg area. Also, we have a slide that we'll put up here with all of our national hotlines that you could be able to contact if you would like to do that or like to have encourage someone to do that as well. So we'll look forward to seeing you tomorrow. You have a good night.